Good day. Unfortunately today, we're going to spend some time in Leviticus, the rules and regulations about health and safety. My name is Johan, and I would like to take you today through the health and safety rules and regulations. What is the responsibility for you as a senior pastor towards your employees and the congregation? Because remember, this is a public gathering, and health and safety cannot be taken anyway in any matter lightly. We know technology does play a role in the kingdom of God, as long as the focus point is always Jesus. As soon as technology takes the focus away from Jesus, we have missed the mark. We always need to know technology is there to enhance the kingdom of God, to help to bring the message across and to make it more effective. And this is why we need technology in the church. But if we have all this technology, we need people. We need people to set it up, to break it down, and to operate it. And in that sense, we need to take health and safety very, very serious, because those employees and those people who are looking after the technical equipment is your responsibility. But if we turn to the scriptures, we read in Romans 13 verse 1, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. And the authority that exists are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves." In the live event industry, we need to comply with the South African National Standards, for short SANS. They have their book of Leviticus, the Occupational Health and Safety Manual, in short, the OHS Act. This is very necessary to understand. We need to comply and abide by these rules. These rules are there that everybody can be safe. Safety is your responsibility and also your employees' responsibility. I'm going to take you through this session right now, and we're going to talk about what is everybody's responsibilities and what do we need to know. I'm going to refer during this session, you as a senior pastor, as the employer. The staff is going to be the employees, and then also the volunteers. They will also fall under the employees due to the fact that they are going to help and assist the church. And it's very, very important that we also need to look after them. But I want to discuss a few topics with you. So in this session, I would like to talk about responsibilities. So what is the responsibility of the employer? What is the responsibility of an employee? What is the responsibility of a first aider? Because you need a first aider, but we'll talk about that. The fire marshal, what is his responsibility and what can he do? And then I also would like to talk about creating a safe environment. That is very, very important. We're going to talk about personal protection equipment, PPE, appropriate certificates. We're going to talk about COCs. That is very, very important. COCs are certificates of compliance. We're going to talk about working on height certificates, rigging certificates, and working with machinery. And then I want to end off with emergencies. Under emergencies, we will talk about signage, medical aid kits, fire extinguishers, and an evacuation plan. We have this session that we can now quickly discuss health and safety. So we need to take this very seriously. We do amazing things with technology, but it's my responsibility and your responsibility to make sure that the people are safe. So let's go through this session and see whose responsibility is what. And I hope you're going to enjoy this, and I'm going to try to make it as exciting as possible. Health and safety is everybody's responsibility. It is your responsibility to comply with the OHS Act, and it is also the employee's responsibility to comply with the OHS Act. But this is there to create a safe environment that everybody can be safe whenever they work. The OHS Act is a foundation for us just to make sure no unnecessary injuries will occur. I would strongly advise that you buy yourself the OHS Act manual. I'll put the details on the screen. And also the SANS 10366 2015, that is a health and safety at events. I would also advise that you buy that manual. That is very, very important as well. But if we look at the responsibilities of the employer, So let's quickly have a look at different responsibilities for you as an employer. It is the employer's duty to provide and maintain a safe environment to work in for his employees. Training needs to be provided that the employee can work in a safe manner. The employer cannot force an employee to do a task if he has not the certifications or he feels uncomfortable that it is not safe to a reasonable matter. It is the employer's duty to make sure everybody in his employment and anybody on his premises complies to the OHS Act. Very, very important. It's your responsibility that everybody complies to the OHS Act. It is the employer's duty to inform the employee what is expected of him and what duties he is liable for. You as the employer have employed somebody to do a certain function. So it is your responsibility to inform the employee what you expect of him. And if he cannot do that, then either he needs to go for training or you need to ask somebody else to do the work. So what is the duties of the employee? It is his responsibility to take care of the health and safety of himself and other people who might be affected. The employee must comply to all health and safety regulations given to him by the employer or anybody who has the authority to enforce health and safety. Report any situation what is unsafe or unhealthy to his employer. If an employee was involved in an accident where he got injured, it needs to be reported to his employer or an authorized personnel. If an employee gets injured on site, he needs to report it as soon as possible. That an injury report can be filled in. And also, if any injuries occurred and the employer did not create a safe environment, he will be held liable for that injury. This is why there's a lot of responsibility on the employer if he does not comply with the OHS Act. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please, if anything happens to anybody on your premises and you did not take the right precautions, then you will be held liable for this. This is why the OHS Act is so important. I have walked into churches so many times and people are taking shortcuts. They are not complying with any form of health and safety. And an accident happened so quick. And please, you need to emphasize this. Health and safety in churches are completely neglected. Nobody cares about health and safety in a church. It's like, let's just quickly do this, let's just quickly do that. Until something happens, then you as the senior pastor is going to be held liable for that injury. And that can even land up in jail time. This is how serious this is. If a person gets injured or a fatality happens and the right precautions or the right measurements was not in place, then you as the employer will be held liable for this. So please get these things in order. This is why I want to do this session with you, that you know how important health and safety is. It is of utmost important that you start complying with the OHS Act. And then with first aiders. So what is the responsibility of a first aider? If there is an injury on site, it is the employer's duty to make sure the worker do get first aid treatment. If there are more than 5 personnel, a first aid kit needs to be available for the staff. Have a first aid kit available at the front of house. Clear signage where someone can get first aid treatment. This is very important. So for the staff, if you have 5 or more staff members, you need to have a first aid kit on the premises, but also have a first aid kit at the front of house, at your technical desk, that if something happens, then somebody from the congregation can just quickly run to the front of house desk and get some first aid assistance. But you are not allowed to give any medication. I am a first aider and they have put so much emphasis on it. You're not even allowed to give an aspirin to a person. They even told us if a child on a sports day, on a sports field, is dehydrated, you are not even allowed to give him an Energade. The only thing what you are allowed to give him is water. You can advise the mother, you would advise that she can buy him an Energate, but you as a first aider, you are not allowed to prescribe any medication because you are not a doctor and you do not have the authorization that you can prescribe any medication or give any medication to a person. You do not know what allergies they have. You do not know what's going to happen if you give him maybe an aspirin. So please be very, very, very careful with this. You cannot give anybody any medication. So you can only offer first aid, and that's it. Don't give any medication. So please, in your safety, in your first aid box, no medication. Okay, please. Someone should have a first aid certificate to assist during a Sunday service if any members need first aid treatment. Please, this is very important. If we talk about a fire marshal, the fire marshal is employed by the state and his job is to make sure everything complies to the OHS Act. He is there to make sure that nothing will happen. And if he is not happy with something, and he needs to be reasonable, and they really are reasonable, but if they see a cable running across a floor, they will tell you to fix it, and you have to fix it because it's a hazard. People can trip and fall. So you need to make sure you create a safe environment for your congregation. You cannot have obstacles lying on the floor when you have a Sunday service. If a person falls and he breaks his leg, you are going to be held liable for it because you did not create a safe environment. And if it goes to the extent that maybe he's not happy with the installation and he says this installation is not safe or there's not enough signage or the doors are not in order, then he can close the Sunday service. He's got the right to do that because his job is to make sure that the public is safe. And this is why you need to focus on these things. Please get the manual and read through it, study it. And if you have to send somebody on a health and safety course of your staff members, that they know what needs to happen. I'm begging you, please, because churches do neglect this. No church, what I've ever seen, is complying with the OHS Act. And I want churches to be safe. If anything happens in a church, then it's going to be the senior pastor's responsibility. And I'm doing this session to protect the senior pastor. So please, 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 the OHS Act needs to be upheld and you need to comply with the OHS Act. What does it mean to create a safe environment? Before you commence any work, you need to do a risk assessment. So what is a risk assessment, you ask? So before you start even, you need to look at the health and safety. What is the hazards what might occur? If you're going to use a ladder or a scaffold, quarantine it off with danger tape, that nobody step behind the danger tape, that you can keep them safe and yourself safe. That is extremely important. And whatever work you are going to do, inspect the equipment. You need to inspect the equipment, what you're going to use. And if there's any damages to the equipment, you need to report this to your employer. And then they need to look at it and they need to replace it or acknowledge that it is unsafe, that you can't work with this. Remember, safety is very, very important. You cannot climb on a scaffold and the scaffold is bent. If it's going to fall, you're going to fall off and you're going to break your arm or a leg. So it's always very, very important, especially if you work with power tools. Make sure that it is in a working and a safe working condition. You need to create a safe environment to work in. This is why a risk assessment is always so important before you even commence working. You need to know what you're going to do and you need to know what you're going to need. So always plan even before you start. Make sure your work environment is clean. Don't work in an untidy place because that is a clean house is a safe house. So please, when you do any work, make sure the environment around you are clean and tidy, that you do not have any obstacles falling around or somebody tripping or anything like that. Make always sure you work in a safe environment. After you've have done the risk assessment. You have assessed what PPE you're going to have to use. These personal protection equipment are there for your safety. So if you're going in our industry, our basic personal protection equipment are safety boots, gloves, hard hat, and a harness. Safety boots are there if something drops on your foot, then at least you won't break your toe. Gloves that you won't, if something scratches or whatever, that you don't, maybe you might break a finger, but you won't take off all your skin. It happens. So gloves are pretty important. It can save a finger. If you are working on heights and somebody's working overhead, please wear a hard hat, because somebody can just drop something out of a roof and it can fall on your head, and that could be a fatality. And your harness. You have to have a harness. According to law, if you are 2 meters above the floor, you have to have a harness and you have to be hooked in and clipped in. These are not things what I like to talk about, but there are fatalities in our industry. Unfortunately, last year, there was an accident in the F&B stadium. There was a rigger in a roof. They were rushed. I don't know the whole scenario and the circumstances, but I can say this: if he practiced what the law says, then this would not have happened. The law states always that if you are on a truss or if you are in the air, you always have to be clipped in at one place at all times. So I believe he moved from one truss to the next truss. And according to the law, you have to hook into the truss where you're currently sitting on, and then you climb over, and as soon as you have climbed over, you hook into that truss, and then you can unhook yourself from the previous truss. I don't know what was the circumstances, but unfortunately that was not the case. He was not hooked in at all. And he fell 25 meters, and before the ambulance could get to him, he passed away. This is a severe case, and there's many more cases where people got injured, broken bones because they fell. So health and safety and your PPE are very, very important. So please take this very serious. If a person don't have a harness on, he's not allowed to climb. If he wants to climb, you ask him, where are your harness? You have to wear a harness at all times. If you're 2 meters above the floor, you have to wear a harness. According to the OHS Act, you have to. Some of the rules and regulations I don't agree with. It doesn't make always sense, but that is the law. So sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it's law. So let's just do it the way they say we have to do it. Okay, great. I quickly want to take the time just to talk about appropriate certificates. So we're first going to start off with certificate of compliance. You need a certificate of compliance, a COC, for power. So only a qualified electrician can give you a certificate of compliance for your power. You are going to need a certificate of compliance every time you do major changes to your rig. If you move equipment around, you might have to get a new COC. Or when you add equipment. Every time you add equipment, you're definitely going to need a COC, because you need to make sure you stay in your limits. If a fire marshal comes into your venue and he says he wants your COC for your electrical, then you have to present it to him, and if you don't have one, he can close the service. You need COCs. On a COC for structural, you need a structural engineer to write a COC. These COCs are there to make sure the structure is safe. So as soon as a building is completed, you'll get a COC. If you do temporal staging, you're going to need a COC. Anything what is rigged in the roof, doesn't matter what you have hang in the roof, you need a COC, because a COC is there to say it is safe. A structural engineer will come in and he will look at where you have hung the trusses, if it is on rigging points, and can that rigging points handle the weight. If it's rigged from a wrong point, he can tell you, take it down, it's not safe, and you have to, because he's there to make sure it's safe. And as soon as you've got the COC from a structural engineer, you are safe and you are covered. If something happens, then the liability falls on the structural engineer because he told you that it is safe, and that is his job to make sure that it is safe. This is why you do need these COCs. It's to protect yourself and to protect your congregation and your staff. If we look at working on heights, if a person is above 2 meters and is working above 2 meters, he needs a working on height certificate. It does sound ridiculous, but the law says above 2 meters, you need to wear a harness, and that states also you need to have a working on height certificate to know how to operate with a harness. You have to make sure you're safe. Working on heights doesn't matter where you are, you always have to comply with this. I will put some detail down for you that you can know where you can send your staff to go get or obtain these certificates to be able to work on heights. Rigging certificates. So why do you need a rigging certificate? As soon as you're going to do any form of rigging in your church, the person who is doing the rigging, he has to be qualified. You cannot have any person just doing rigging, because it's about for the people. You're rigging above people. He needs to know what he's doing and the way he's doing the rigging. You don't want something to slip during a service and that whole truss falls, or your motors are not hung right, you are towing too much or anything like that, and that can be a big danger for your congregation. If there's any machinery what you need to operate, if it's a cherry picker, a scissor lift, a forklift, whoever operates those machines, they have to have the licenses for them. If anything happens and they do not have a license, then you as a senior pastor will be held responsible for the injury because you did not provide your staff with a proper training. So make sure that your staff is proper trained, and if they have done that without your consent, then it's not your responsibility because that's not their job. But if you do require them to do that, and they have done it and there was an injury, then it's your responsibility. And it's also the employee's responsibility to say, I do not have the right certificates to operate this machinery, and because of that, I cannot do this. So please make sure your staff have the right licenses. With a cherry picker for now, just a quick thing, with a cherry picker, if they come and deliver the cherry picker, you can ask them, can you just quickly give this person training? And usually they allow you to train two people or two persons, and that license lasts for a year. Your working on high certificate lasts for 3 years. Not sure about the forklift, but your licenses you have to renew them, obviously, every few years, because things do change. So just make sure you got all the appropriate certificates in place for your church, because this is very, very important. If a health and safety officer walks into a venue and you do not have all these things in place, he can stop the service. So please, I do not want to emphasize too much that they will stop the service, but please, if it is really something really bad, and the health and safety officer sees that this is going to cause an accident, he is going to stop the service, because the people are the most important thing in this world. So look after them. Get your certificates in order, please. Okay, so let's talk about emergencies. With emergencies, we need signage. You need signage to show where's all your emergency exits, and it needs to be according to the SABS standards. The size and the clarity is very, very important. So you need to have all the signage. You need to have signage to show where your fire extinguishers are. You need signage to show where your medical aid kit is, where people can find any form of medical treatment if they need to have. You have to have all the signage. You need to have signage if there's stairs, that just to show that there is hazardous, that they can maybe trip on the stairs. You need all these signages. Signages are very, very important. It is a public gathering, and you need to make sure you have signages in place. Show the people where the toilets are. Show the disability signage. Those signages, please, just make sure everything labeled, marked correctly, and if a fire marshal walks into the church, that he can see everything has the right signage, is the right size, it's the right locations. Make sure your signage, you get that right. Like medical aid kits, please have your medical aid kits available, stocked. Always have it stocked, that you have the basic equipment, what you need for any form of medical aid treatment. The first aider, his job is only there to stabilize a patient until somebody come or gets there who has the right qualifications to treat the patient. A first aider is just there to stabilize a patient, and that's why you need a first aider on site all the time. Send somebody for a first aid kit, for a first aid training course, that he can be a first aider level 3, that at least he can help somebody just to stabilize them until somebody gets there to help or assist, a doctor or a paramedics. Fire extinguishers, always make sure you have the right fire extinguishers at stage, at front of house, because there's electrical equipment, and wherever else you need fire extinguishers and fire hoses. Make sure it's labeled, the signage is there, that everybody know it's easy accessible, that you can have your fire extinguishers. Very, very important. And also, something what churches overlook is the evacuation plan. Maybe before the service, 5 minutes before the service, just put a little slide up saying this is our evacuation plan. Say, for instance, anything happens during the service, nobody knows what to do. And this is why you have to have an evacuation plan. Show the people where is the gathering point on the church. Also mark it with a sign that everybody know if something should happen, that this is where you need to allocate all the people, that they can just remain there until the area is cleared and that it is safe and that they can go back into the church. Just make sure you keep the people safe of God. It is a church service, and the safety is number one. So just before the service, just put a slide up showing a slide of a church, all the emergency exits on the church, that everybody can know if something should happen, then these are the emergency exits, and that's where we can quickly and effectively get outside, and that nobody will run over one another and somebody might get trampled on. So please, the evacuation plan, that's also very important. Show people, and please just be safe. This is all what I'm asking. And this is why I did this session with you. It's just to show you right now that safety is very, very important. I just briefly touched on it, that you can just know it is important, and you need to equip yourself in the OHS Act. And you have to comply to the OHS Act. There are so many rules and regulations what we need to look at. And please, we've got people in our church. It's a public gathering. And according to law and according to our government, we need to look after them, and their health and safety is our responsibility. So please be safe and keep the people safe. And we know God does amazing things, and we know He's still going to do amazing things. And the church is there to serve the people and help them to be safe when they come to receive the word of God. I'm going to put up a list now of things or books or places where you can go and maybe get some training if you need to be. And please, or where you can get maybe the OHS Act. But if you have any questions or queries, please email me at johan@blueye.co.za, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions what you have. We are here for one another. We are the body, and I really truly feel this is a necessity in the church, and it is very, very much neglected. And I do feel there is a shortcoming in the technical side in the church, and I just really want to share all of this with you. But God bless, and may you have a wonderful day.